Are you sure? It's going to be super high bar.
It will be a super high bar. But we will understand where the bar is.
I didn't think so. I can lower them. Can you blame her? Yes. We got a lot of them. It's kind of embarrassing. Yeah. Just like, it's almost exactly the same. Yeah. Same intensity, same number. It's like, and he had, I heard him that I was 800,000 followers just in the last week. A new phone. I know, my kid is swift. Like, there are more, she has more followers than our kids in the world, but people say, no, she's just launching on it. Because that's what because she needs that. Yeah. Yeah. She's not popular. Yeah. Just trying to tap into that market.
Yeah, because we'll have to go back and look. In the past, we were saying that it occurred last year. Oh, because the ones that I was aware of, like Harbor Heights, they only received overload.
Before that. You good bit Swift?
Yeah. Yeah, so,
Okay, I'll go back and check on those.
yeah, can you just double check, and I'll check on my side as well, because again, that's another one of those things that we're technically violating the contract, and ultimately if we have to push it and say, well, what we did in the past, bad on us, but we're going to follow the contract, like, I'm more than willing to say, well, I wasn't aware that they were getting both in the past. Because if a principal made a decision at their level to provide additional para, in addition to then getting overload, we wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, I think it, where we remember, so maybe that
Okay.
was just, I can,
Yeah, just double
David's
check.
had it 2 years in a row, so I can check the notes.
Okay.
Maybe it'll go reverse order because although might be right, might be good to just get done with. Maybe the last one.
Sorry, we're starting just a couple minutes late here. Good evening, everyone. I call the Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 Peninsula School District Board of Directors meeting to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to roll on to item 3, approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Jennifer and seconded by Lori. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Agenda is approved. Item 4, comments from the community. So we only have one tonight. So I will just remind you that you will have 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Perot, just please state your first and last name when you come to the podium. Thank you very much.
Last year, student reading at basic grade level standards improved by only 0.1% to 65.3%, an improvement of fewer than 10 students out of the 9,000 plus students district-wide. again leaving over 3,000 students reading below basic grade level standards. If not for the hundreds of dyslexic students in private reading tutoring paid for by their families, the results for the district would have been much worse. Administrators responsible for reading draw large taxpayer-funded salaries, wield decision-making authority with minimal oversight or transparency. Numerous have been with the district for many years. During that time, they have dismissed parents' concerns, righteously claimed the district provided top-notch effective literacy instruction. Meanwhile, annually, thousands continued to read below grade level. These administrators include those who have violated citizens' First Amendment rights by censoring hundreds of dyslexia and literacy-related social media comments, unlawfully withheld public records concerning dyslexia, and orchestrated the cover-up of the illegal release of sensitive educational and health records on dozens of dyslexic students. Now, after the superintendent's 100% literacy task force, these administrators acknowledge the shortcomings of their previous methods. Recently, the district's chief academic officer admitted, year after year, when we examine our data, we're not satisfied with it. This is a significant about-face from years of unwavering defense of their approach to literacy. Some board members have stated it's not our role to dictate how administrators do their jobs, but rather to hold the administrators accountable when they don't get their jobs done. Yet, year after year, it appears no one's been held accountable for thousands of students not learning to read, or the recent costly legal judgments and settlements related to violating the educational rights of dyslexic students, costing taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. If the district doesn't move on from this failed leadership by these ineffective and entrenched bureaucrats, it'll be seen as by the public as your endorsement of these failures. This would be unfortunate because without the leadership from the board members advocating for structured literacy grounded in the science of reading, and the superintendent carrying the torch, the small but important first steps would never have happened. It's time to put an end to the failed leadership and take decisive action to ensure all kids learn to read, even if it means providing explicit instructions on how administrators perform their duties, or better yet, find individuals who can actually get the job done for students, families, and taxpayers. Thank you for your service.
All right, item 5 is the consent agenda. Is there any discussion prior to the vote?
I do have a request. If we could get some clarification on again, we have 3 out-of-state travel requests, which is very common on the consent agenda, but the form remains very confusing, in my opinion. And I was wondering if someone could come up, if Dan would be willing to come up and just again explain to anyone who has seen it why the amounts appear to vary, and just how the form works. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the question, Director Glover. You do see 3 out-of-state travel requests. One is fairly simple and straightforward. That's for our transportation director to attend a conference, I believe in Ohio, if I remember correctly. Some of the confusion tends to come around the student requests and what are the expenses per each adult, the way it's listed there on the right-hand side with staff member, and then there is a total expense. So really the ones you're looking at this evening, there's one for the Peninsula High School girls basketball team. You will see that that has a total amount, and if I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me, it does have an amount per adult. That is, we tie that together with the budget code listed there on that one. I believe what's listed is 02. So that trip is either entirely or nearly or entirely funded through O2, which is ASB funds. And so what that means is there's no basic ed dollars going to that. That's usually ASB fundraisers. That may be funds that are there as the result of Winterfest. It may be selling pepperoni sticks, whatever the fundraiser that each group did. That's how that trip is funded. The other one there is for the Peninsula High School French Club. That one is designated as 08. 08 is what we call our revolving account, and that is generally where donations are deposited and then spent. And so oftentimes that will be the result of a donation from a booster club, from a Rotary or Kiwanis. Whatever organization or group has made that donation usually comes into 08 and out of 08. The other thing you see on the French Club one is that it says there's 0 staff expense. That is probably coming from that particular individual saying, I'm not spending any of my own money. We are going to redesign that form so that we have a column that lists staff expense and budget code for that piece, as well as student expense and budget code, so that we know what budget code both staff and students are coming from. And we've been in discussions, and we'll work on making that electronic as well. But the goal would be, and I don't disagree with you, the goal would be to make it more straightforward for the person completing the form, as well as for the reader of the form.
Oh, that would be great, thanks. Because especially the ones that say student cost or something that indicates to me, I would interpret that to mean students are paying a portion of the fee, but then it later says that it's the cost of the district is X amount. You know, that's was confusing.
Yeah, so we do need a redesign on that and room for some more notes that will explain that more thoroughly as well, because it is very abbreviated in that little space at the bottom, and when we do it electronically, we'll have room to do some of those things as well. So we had that discussion, and that is a change we plan to make.
Great, thank you. That's all.
Thanks for the great question and the follow-up. Okay, any more discussion prior to the vote on the consent agenda this evening? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Lori and seconded by Chuck. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. The consent agenda has been approved. All right, so moving on to the meat of the meeting tonight, we have our reports. This evening we have our elementary school improvement plan presentation. So we've got Natalie Boyle, John Yellowlees, John Helwig, et al., all of our elementary school principals here. So come on up.
Up to the podium. Yes. All right, so thank you for having us this evening. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask our principals to come up one by one and introduce themselves as well as the building in which they serve in. So my name is Natalie Boyle. I am the Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning.
Good evening, I'm Christy Brooks. I am the principal at Purdy Elementary.
Good evening, I'm Allie Shepard, the principal at Harbor Heights Elementary.
Hello, I'm David Brooks, principal at Swiftwater Elementary.
Hello, I'm Jessica Rosendahl, the principal at Artendale Elementary.
Hi, I'm Katya Ramelli, principal at Voyager Elementary.
Happy Tuesday, I'm Abby Barabee, I'm the principal at Vaughn Elementary.
Good evening, Todd Herring, principal at Minter Creek.
Delana Halliday, principal at Discovery.
Stephanie Strader, principal at Pioneer.
And Hugh Maxwell, principal at Evergreen.
John Helwick, assistant superintendent, elementary.
All right. So you will have an opportunity to hear from all of these principals throughout this presentation. Just some grounding knowledge as we dig in a little bit further. So we have done a pretty drastic change to our school improvement plans for this school year. Really, the inspiration and the direction from this that we took was from the OSPI school improvement plan template. This is a widely used and publicized document within our state. As you look at the document, you'll notice this is a snipping from the second page of the document that some of those columns look familiar. So as you saw in each of the school's school improvement plans, there are those activities, the measures, the resources, the timelines, all of that is driven from this template. So it wasn't something we created on our own, but rather utilized some district-wide templates to help us with that. A big difference with the SIP plans for this school year is we as a district created those 3 SIP goals for our schools based on our strategic plan. So we have a full year under our belts with our new strategic plan, and we have data associated with that. So based on the data, we created goals for every school. So there are 3 goals on each of the SIP plans. Previous years, each school got to kind of decide with their BLT or their school teams what that looks like. We have asked them to have 3 goals, and those areas are in belonging, which is under the learning environment, and then under academic excellence, we have English language arts, and then math. The goals were set by the district. So we did a formula where in order to be at 100% by 2026, what do those cumulative scores for grades 3 through 5 need to be on the SBA in order to reach 100%? So each one of those goals for this year is going to get us that percentage up towards meeting 100% by 2026. So you'll be able to see that growth in the goals. Within their school building leadership teams, principals were able to go to their BLTs this summer in August and say, this is our goal. What are those different activities and measures that we're going to do at our school that are going to help us to get to this goal? Those conversations were right off the gate in August because we wanted them to work through that continuous improvement cycle, which is about a 6-week cycle. So starting on our first professional learning day, what is work that you're going to do in your building to help reach that goal of, 80% literacy or whatever that score is. And so with their building leadership team, they help to identify what those areas are under the smaller columns of the activities and the measures and the time frame. And that's all under this Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. So over the course of 6 weeks, they're going to set some goals for themselves. They're going to create that plan. They're going to do the work. They're going to study the results and not wait until the end of the year to study the results, but within that 6-week cycle, and then they're going to act. And making that difference. If something's not working, that gives the individual schools time to adjust that plan for that next six-week cycle to ensure that that plan is in place. So as our principals speak to their individual plans, that's where you'll hear the individuality of how they're addressing those goals this evening. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to our first group of principals.
All right, so I am sharing the data for all 10 of our elementary schools for English language arts. So you'll see in 2022, the SBA data for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade together, the proficiency of students that passed for each school in the first column under 2022. And then the goal is to get to 100%. To get there, we have it broken down. You'll see that in 2023, each school score, and then to try to get to 100% by 2026, you'll see that in 2024, the amount they need to increase by. So for example, you'll see Artendale, they were at 78%, and in 2023, they need to grow to 85% to be on track to get to 100% in 2026. So you can see each school listed there in their data and the amount of growth in column C that they need to get to for this school year. Any questions? Okay, all right.
All right, so Jessica and I are going to split this next slide together. So there are many different activities that we can choose from. There's a whole list of them, ones that we're currently doing, ones that maybe I'm not doing in my building, but another colleague is like, oh, that sounds awesome. That's exactly what we need to do. But the ones that are listed up here are kind of the more common amongst a lot of the buildings. While yes, we have a lot of unique needs at the different buildings, there's obviously some through lines, some commonalities that we're going to find. And so that's what some of these are listed up here. There's actually 4. It looks like the formatting might have missed that fourth one. But the first one there is the 6 weeks of explicit instruction, looking at the intervention models, getting down to those smaller groups, so which kind of leads into the third bullet there that Jessica will speak on here in a minute about the win time. But really being explicit with that instruction. What does it look like? So if we're doing small groups, one example, so my 5th grade team were the very first day that they were really getting into small groups, taking time to explicitly tell them, here's what it looks like to be a partner. Here's what it looks like to work in groups. You know, we can't just assume that kiddos know exactly, oh yeah, just be in a group. We know what that means. So different roles, what does it mean to be in a small group? What are the expectations? Just being very clear and explicit about that. And one of the measures we use to check on that is a walkthrough tool that through the district administrators and my colleagues and we worked on what that tool looks like and keeping it electronic, keeping it simple so we can get some data points. So every time we're in classrooms, we're checking to see, are we seeing the explicit instruction? And what does that look like? Not just, okay, I see you're explicitly teaching. Okay, well, what does that mean? You know, what are the look-fors that we're going to see? Do that checklist. We can report back to our teams. Yep, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're not seeing yet. And then we can also have those conversations with our staff. Okay, I didn't see this, but I also am only in your classroom for this snapshot. And so it might have been, oh, we did that right before you came in. Okay, that's great data to have. Or, you know what, forgot to do that this time. Thank you for that feedback. So the next time they can be informed and make sure they're hitting those. That's the second one there, implementation of ECRI. This is our 3rd year of making sure ECRI is getting done, K-3, although last year was the first year we did 3rd grade. And one thing that we're all really excited about isn't just the ECRI now, and well, even, you know, each time, you know, the here and now, but the carryover it's going to have going up through the grades. So when we first started it, we all talked about how great it was for those kiddos now, but how excited we were for the next year and the next year, and it just building upon itself. And seeing over time, we should see all of the scores increase, all of the reading performances increase, and even looking beyond, what's it going to look like in the middle school when our kiddos have those foundations and just those, you know, just all the things that they're working on every single day explicitly just continue to carry on through the grades. So that longitudinal data is going to be really exciting to see.
Thanks, Todd. Okay, so our next couple ones, sorry, I have a really quiet voice, is the implementation of doing our win blocks. And so what Todd was talking about earlier is our core instructional blocks, and we really make sure that students are not getting pulled out of that time. So we have a separate win time, and it's what I need. So that is either intervention, so they're doing small groups, one-on-one conferring with students. It could be enrichment, because we know we have students too that are at that core. So how do we extend their learning by giving enrichment, different activities, providing research projects or things like that for them. Also, they could go to LAP. So if they need LAP support, reading support, they're going to go see that interventionist. Maybe they have an IEP, so they're going to get pulled or push in support based, again, on what the student's individual plan is. So those win blocks really provide that differentiation for students. It also provides student choice. So I know at our school, we have menus for students, right? And we're trying to do those flexible means with UDL. And so students can choose, oh, I need to work on word work right now, or I need to work on vocabulary, or I need to work on my fluency. So students have independent tasks that they're doing, so the teacher can meet with small groups or meet with one-on-one, and then all those other service providers can flood into the classroom, or they can get pulled out based on their needs. And then the other one that's not on there, but it's really important, that connects with our UDL, is learning targets and success criteria. So really making sure that students understand what they're learning, why is it important to the larger context of the world, and how am I going to get there, right? So really making sure that it's aligned to our standards, it's aligned to our curriculum that we're using, and really making sure that students understand that. So we put it in kid-friendly language. It's posted on the whiteboard or posted on their slide deck, or I've seen it on anchor charts or things like that. And then that way you can go back and ask the students when we're walking around doing that walkthrough data tool that Todd was referencing, I'm asking them, what are you learning? Why is it important? Why is it essential to do that? And how are you going to show your teacher what you know? so that you're able to understand it at that level. And like Todd was mentioning too, that walkthrough data, it's so important. We went through it with our BLT team and really looked at it and talked about what are those look-fors. We're gonna bring it to our staff next week during our data dig and really pull it apart and look at what are our trends, what are we doing well, what do we wanna keep doing, but really making sure staff are seeing it as that's a tool for us to improve upon and to celebrate what we are doing and to plan those next steps too.
Awesome.
Yeah, anything else?
No. So now I think we're moving on to math.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Now, Chrissy did a great job explaining everything that you see on the chart there. Really what it boils down to with math, for us to be 100% proficient in 2026, we're looking at elementaries having to grow anywhere from 10% this year to 20%. So we've got about a 10% differential between all of us. When I speak Vaughn specific and I look at those numbers, right now I've got 15% of about 300 students. So I'm talking about 45 kids this year that I've got to move from a level 1 or level 2 to a level 3 or level 4 in math to make sure that we're on track to meet that 100% long term. And every school is a little bit different in their area, but we all know that we have this incremental growth to make 100% by the time we get to 2026. To do that, here are some of our activities in math.
So I'm going to speak to the first one, which is ensuring that our teachers are using our district-approved curriculum, which is Envisions. And so our teams this year have really worked through the daily schedule. So our master schedule has a dedicated math block in all of our elementary schools to prioritize math. And then using the Envisions curriculum, which could be a math map or manipulatives, and then helping each other, so working in their PLCs to create those learning targets around the concept that they are studying for that unit or that week, and then posting those. Jessica had mentioned like either on the whiteboard or in the slide deck or an anchor chart, and Delana is going to speak to that a little bit more.
Which I don't need to say that much because it was just covered. So using learning targets during math and the great empowerment to learning that provides for students. So it's a wonderful UDL strategy, Universal Design for Learning, to make sure that students know what they're learning and why they are learning it. It helps set the goals so they understand where we're headed and where we're going even after that. So again, having learning targets and objectives available in student-centered language so they can understand what they're learning and why is another strategy.
The last activity, which not all of us embarked on just yet, but a lot of us are kind of stepping into, is this idea of a math talk routine and beginning utilizing the technique. This time of year, the first 6 weeks, is really about setting up those systems for math talks, teaching kids routines and expectations. This is how I turn and talk to a partner. This is what I'm expecting. You know, I nod at my partner to make sure they know I'm listening. The discussions, the math discussions that kids are having, they include small group, partner talk. It helps kids make sense of the problems that they're doing. That helps them solve the problems. Really, the idea is that the one that's talking about the math is the one that's learning the math. And so this time of year is what we're doing is we're setting kids up for success. I can pose a problem. Now you understand that system, and there's that accountability level that the teacher has. So kids are talking about math and building on that math understanding. It's a great routine. Okay, we're going to turn it over to SEL.
Okay, well, we get to wrap it up for you. Who's in charge of slides? Oh, I am. All right, then. That's easy. So we wanted to remind you that the Panorama survey is taken by 3rd through 5th grade students in the Peninsula School District, and it's a measure that we use to measure students' mindset, their behavior, and their attitude towards school, which will tell us a lot about school and also beyond the classroom. So I mentioned it's grades 3 through 5. It's a 52-item survey that's scored on a Likert scale. And it's actually 2 different surveys. One is student competency, so it focuses on growth, mindset, and grit. And then there's the student supports and environment, which is where the sense of belonging fits in. And so the structure of the data table is the same as what you've heard from ELA and math. Column C shows you that all of our elementaries have about an 8 to a 12% growth target for this year. The survey is taken in the spring, so you see the spring 2023 data and then the goal for the spring of 2024. Let me click that for you.
Thank you. So just a couple of the activities that are happening in some of the schools, our daily class meetings. Those are just critical for teachers to build that rapport and that respect and get student voice. I know when I go walk around, I've got fourth graders sitting on a carpet in a circle and just really having real talks about some of the challenges that they face. Sometimes a student might come to school and just have had a rough morning or a rough evening, and sometimes they will share that with the group, and other students will help try and give them maybe some advice. But it's just really critical piece of getting that student voice in there, and teachers building that classroom culture of safety and support. Some of the other things that all of us are doing, we all have school-wide and classroom matrices, which are really, we know when kids know where the bumpers are and what the expectations are, then we can work towards them meeting those expectations. So we have those listed throughout schools and throughout classrooms, and we encourage teachers to get student voice in that. Like, what would it look like in our classroom if everybody's being respectful? Like at Evergreen, ours is SOAR, safe, accountable. I even was going to bring an eagle eye, and I can't remember. Anyway, SOAR, everybody has their different little acronym, right? And so we oftentimes build off of those, right, for kids to be able to remember those things. We also all have our positive recognition system for recognizing students. For example, at our school, we have Eagle Eyes, EYE, like I saw so-and-so doing this. And then one of the things we've added to that just this year is if we're doing a monthly character trait, kids that get it for that special character trait, they get a little extra star in there, and then we post those and things. But I know all of our different schools are doing different systems. And David's going to talk a little bit about our core curriculum.
Thanks, Hugh. Tied to class meetings, we also have Second Step, which is our curriculum. Our school is focusing on Unit 1 right now, which is growth mindset and goal setting. And for conference week coming up in a couple of weeks, we'll do a performance task where kids actually have to do a performance task related to a goal. Fifth grade is actually setting a academic goal. But from kindergarten through fourth grade, it's working on I can learn something hard. So it's not just how do you set a goal, but that mindset of how do I get better, knowing that mistakes are okay. So every grade level has a little different focus that's connected to empowering kids to take ownership for their learning. And that's that Second Step curriculum. We also have Kelso's Choices, which our kids have been learning how to problem solve and think of like what are two strategies I might use to solve a problem. If it's a small backpack problem, what two things can I have in my back pocket? And so we practice those, especially at the start of the year. And those happen during class meetings and are time for our Second Step. And that's our section on learning environment.
I just have one thing about learning something hard. Safe, on task, accountable, and respectful.
Next slide.
Clicker.
Clicker. I got the clicker right here. There it is. Okay. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the reason we didn't have science as one of our main goal areas is that it's not called out as a priority in the strategic plan. It's not on our data dashboard, but that doesn't mean that we don't prioritize or believe in the value of science, or that we aren't teaching to the standards for science. All of our students have at least one block a week with our outstanding STEM specialist team. And some get even more than that. And in addition, they're also with their general ed, also outstanding general ed teacher team with STEM Scopes, our adopted STEM curriculum. STEM Scopes is a hands-on next generation science aligned curriculum that we adopted in 2020. And it's centered on student-driven inquiry of phenomenon across flexible storylines. With the pandemic, it was a 2020-21 school year was a bad year for hands-on adoption, but since then we've gotten up to speed, and that's another key element of our science instruction. And to hear a little bit more about what that means at the building level, I have Stephanie.
I would just add to that while it's not called out in our strategic plan, like John said, it is a priority for us to make sure our students are having these opportunities. But I think we like to think of it more as that idea of an opportunity. Science should be exploration. It should be hands-on. It should be an opportunity for students to ask questions, to draw hypotheses, to make prototypes, to debate and converse about why does this work or why doesn't that work. And a lot of that work is going to come out actually in the strength that we're having with literacy work, our reading and our writing skills. The Washington Assessment of Science, which is administered in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade, I believe, is really an analytical reading and writing test. As you can imagine, they're not giving students hands-on experiments to then converse with someone about. So as we're building and strengthening our reading and writing curriculum and our strategies and opportunities for students, we're going to see continued growth in our science as they have the exposure to the content of science, but now they have the skills to apply. One strategy we've been using at Pioneer, and I've seen it actually in my kiddo, my own personal child, as she has moved up to Harbor Ridge, is the CER writing strategy, which is claim, evidence, and reasoning. So through reading a variety of texts, through these experiences with peers, through writing, we are able to then convey what it is that we claim to be true. Here's our evidence, and here's why we think that based on these opportunities. So I feel very confident that teacher comfort and familiarity with our core curriculum and then continued work around our writing and reading standards is going to continue to show growth for our students.
So for the school reports, would you like them alphabetical or just have them come up one at a time, whatever order they want? Okay. Okay, then I'm just gonna let them figure it out. Who goes first?
I'll go. We'll go backwards. Okay, so I thank you for an opportunity to share a little bit about what our SIP goals are at Voyager, and specifically more of what I consider strengths and some areas of growth in those areas. So when I think about reading, this year we're really, really excited about ECRI. That's been a journey. When ECRI first came, I would say that was maybe a little bit hesitation for people to really jump in and accept that. Last year, we got better, and this year we have teachers that I'm so excited. I started the first week. I can tell that kids had it last year, and I'm just really proud of the fidelity that our teachers are implementing ECRI in grades K through 3. That's pretty cool to see. When I think of a growth area for us at Voyager, an area that we struggle with is typically our intermediate grades. So think 3rd through 5th, or even just 4th and 5th grade. We just don't have a really good handle on interventions for those grades, especially if we have students that are still struggling with some phonics pieces that they should have learned in the younger grades. And so that's an area that we continue to work on and work through. When I think about math, I am really excited about bringing back accountable talk. You heard a little bit earlier from Abby what that looks like. Several years ago, we worked with the teacher development group on those accountable talk structures. And I'm really excited. I have new staff who has never experienced that, and I think that will help us boost math and really increase engagement in the classroom. And then also another area that we are looking forward to implementing at Voyager are number talks. I know you've had board meetings where you've learned about what those are, and they're appropriate for all grades, which makes it really exciting that kindergarten all the way through 5th grade could engage students into a number talk. And then when I think about SEL belonging, that's a really strong area for us at Voyager. Our building, again, this year, committed to 3 big building commitments in addition to obviously focusing on the sense of belonging. We feel that those 3 commitments really will help us increase that sense of belonging. So we're committed to doing morning meetings on a regular basis. We're committed to greeting every single child that walks in the door in the morning. And we are committed to recognizing and celebrating students. And you heard a little bit from Hugh what that looks like in his building. A growth area for us at Voyager, specifically for SEL, is the second step curriculum. We are, I believe, the only elementary school who has a character education specialist, and Kathy Johnson has loved teaching second step for the past few years, but it's really time that teachers take that on so that we have that across all grades. And yeah, we want kids to be exposed to that all the time, every day. And so she has many other great ideas, and our kids can benefit from lots of other character education pieces. But second step is back in classrooms, and we're excited about that. So there you have it.
We'll work backwards in the alphabet. Okay, what makes each school unique? So for Vaughn, I'm going to start with math. For math, we are kicking the year off with just being really consistent with our Math and Visions curriculum and making sure school-wide that we're using the tool the district has provided to meet the essential standards. And so I'm excited that, you know, all teachers are embarking on it and better understanding the tool that they have. Definitely a growth area for us is being consistent about collecting the data within that 6-week cycle to make those changes. You know, 6 weeks isn't a long time when you think about it, but it's also a lot better than waiting into the semester. And so how are we making those incremental, those little changes along the way? And is the curriculum providing the right tools when students don't have it? So that's kind of a growth area for us. For ELA, I'm super excited. We spent a lot of time at our PLD, our back to school days, really planning the first 6 weeks of instruction and making sure that kids were set up with routines and procedures to allow them to be successful so teachers can teach small groups, both for students who are excelling, both for students who need extra support, because the reality is that we don't have all the resources all the time to have a student go to LAP or to have them go to a resource teacher or support services, and teachers are the best person to do that. They are the most qualified person. But the first thing they have to do is set up those systems in their classroom so kids can be successful. So we've spent a lot of times this 6 weeks teaching kids, like, this is what it looks like to independent read. This is what it looks like to write on your own. And, you know, jokingly, teachers have stop signs like, hey, I'm teaching a small group. Unless you're bleeding, barfing, or dying, you can't come talk to me right now. And kids start to build this independence, and they do it really, really well, but it has to be explicit. And so we're really taking that time. So now, as we've got our building data and we are setting up our WIN groups, teachers are able to take kids back and really target what they need. Definitely an area of growth is ensuring that teachers have all the tools they need to teach. We don't always know how to teach kids who aren't fluent, who aren't accurate when they're reading, who don't know how to phonemically segment a word. Teachers don't have all those skills in their back pocket, especially when you talk about a 4th grade teacher that's teaching a kid who's reading 6 words a minute. And so a growth area is definitely helping teachers feel more confident in the resources and tools and giving them those opportunities to learn with the students, finding the experts in our district. Kelly Pruitt, one of our TOSAs, excellent resource. Our LAP teachers are excellent resources, and aligning teachers to give them that support. So when they're sitting down in front of those 4 or 5 students, that 30 minutes is real intentional and used really well. Finally, for social emotional, this one I'm kind of, I potentially am the most excited about, which is odd because I love academics. But we've really talked, Yvonne, about collective, consistent commitments. I call it the 3 C's, and I harp at it. I put it in everything we do. Last year, I talked to you guys a lot about collective efficacy, and we've continued that work. But it's really tied to our Tier 1 expectations. So that students feel a sense of belonging, they need to hear the same message from every adult in that building. And so what we've done is we've said all means all, y'all. We're saying the same thing. We have the same list of resources. We have the same tools, lesson plans. We're teaching kids. We're reteaching these first 6 weeks of school. Students have a sense of security. If I'm walking to the bathroom, this teacher might stop me if I'm doing something wrong because I know what the right thing to do is. Teachers feel, I think teachers feel like they are able to, if I'm a 1st grade teacher and I see a 5th grader doing something that maybe we didn't collectively commit to, I'm okay saying, hey, I know your teachers taught you this, because collectively we've all decided that we're gonna do this together. And it just sets us up for the year. We've set our routines, we've set our expectations, kids know them, there are no surprises, unless a guest teacher comes in, and then that's where I come along and I support that person in saying the same language to them. And we're hoping that this will continue that sense of belonging, because I know that my growth area is in March when we take our panorama data, because we take it the week before spring break. We take it right after conferences. We provide this where it is a little dark and it's rainy, right? And like, we know as adults, even that for us sometimes is like, it's hard to kind of wake up and get there. Kids are no different. So how do we continue to say those same things and build them up? So when it comes to March and we're saying, how do you feel about school, that we're getting the same message that we got in November? All right. Thank you.
Like my colleagues, thank you for this opportunity. It's always fun to talk about our own schools and get a moment to brag about our staffs and our communities. Some of the things that make Minter Creek really unique, first off, we're Kids at Hope School, which essentially focuses on not being a slogan and just something that's kind of cute to put on a tagline, but really a mindset and a belief that's felt really all through our community, really building that family, tying that in, and that ties so much into our SEL goals, especially of sense of belonging. We have one of the lessons one month is who are basically your trusted adults. And so there's an activity every student goes through that they identify a trusted adult, someone that they can go to, and we either post that if the student wants it, or at least the teacher knows. And it shows a couple things. One, it shows that like a lot of our students, well, they want to list all 30 adults that they love. It's like, well, let's just focus on a couple. But then there's also some that might not have one, and that's very rare. But there are some kiddos that just don't feel that. And so then me and my counselor and Harmony, our Kids at Hope person who's just amazing, we can focus on that student and come alongside them and help them find someone. And so no student should ever not feel that they have a trusted adult. And so we want to make sure that that's part of it. So that ties into that SEL, that sense of belonging. And we believe that all students are overcomers. Is really focusing on that growth mindset, and that we can do hard things, and it always ends with all kids are capable of success, no exceptions. And every day there's a Kids of Hope pledge. So after we do the Pledge of Allegiance, students go right into the pledge, and so every single day they're saying these positive affirmations, and all kids are capable of success, no exceptions. And then the next step is our teachers really, okay, what does that mean? Okay, it's cute to say and it's good to hear, but what does it mean? So every time the student's saying it, they're not just saying it, but they're believing it. Another thing that's unique to us that really focuses on some of that math and that science is a makerspace that Kim Kinney, who's now the assistant principal at KPMS, last year she was our dean and she started it. And it's just really taken off. So we have a makerspace where every lunch recess, students have the opportunity to come in. Every month we have different themes, different creations, really, really emphasizing that the creativity and exploration, and just expanding those minds and finding multiple ways, which of course we tie into growth mindset. There's a lot of things that we link it to, but really hands-on problem solving, and how do our students overcome difficulties, whether it's a difficult math assignment or math lesson or ELA, whatever it is, they're able to overcome. And so just creating that plasticity in their brains. And then kind of the third thing I want to speak on as far as our uniqueness is the arts infusion that we started last year. There are 3 schools, and I know we've shared that with you as well, and really looking at enriching our curriculum. So last year we focused on math and visual arts. This year we're focusing on ELA and movement, and just how the different ways to access the learning. Some of our students can access it this way. Well, that's fine for them, but what about all the students that are on the edges? We want to make sure that we're aiming for the margins as well. And so using art infusion to really allow all of our students to access and gain that confidence and that experience. Getting towards our strengths, very solid SEL, a very strong sense of community. It's always great to hear new families come in and just express how welcome they feel and how much of a family Minter Creek really is. And we have a very strong student to teacher relationship. We always score very well in that, and it's not a coincidence. We have this very caring, very loving, very nurturing environment. And we just started a kindness club. One of our 5th grade teachers, Dawn Barnes, who's fabulous, she started a kindness club. We had 43 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders give up a recess to come and do it. Their first task was how do we show kindness? And they came up with all kinds of areas, to each other, to ourselves, to the adults, to the property, to the equipment. It was really awesome to see where they took it. And then they did a little goodie cart that they took to all staff, and just to see the kids beaming, it was awesome. And so that's one of our many strengths. Some areas for growth, kind of the 2 main ones are around number sense and just reading fluency, just the ease of which our students are reading. There's just how do we make it smoother? How do we make it easier? How do we help them to make sense of the text that they're reading? And then the number sense, a lot like my colleagues talked about with the number talks, really emphasizing that, just understanding numbers. We found, especially over the last few years, that those are some of the big holes, at least in math, that our students are having is, okay, they may know even if they know the algorithm, they don't know what the heck that means. And so working on arrays, working on all different ways, how do we represent it? The new math, which really isn't new, but just a way of understanding and just understanding that number sense. And so if we can really get those things down, the fluency and the number sense, we know that our students are more than numbers. We all know that. We all know that it's more than test scores. And we also need to work on getting those scores up. So those are two of the main ways we're going to do that. Thank you for your time.
All right. I'm glad you're all hanging in there. It's a lot of great information. I'm really excited to share about what's great at Purdy Elementary. We have such a great school, and it's such an honor to be a part of that incredible staff and community with our students. I'm going to start with SEL because we had a real aha. And that's what's great about these 6-week cycles is we were looking at the data on sense of belonging, and we've always had a really strong sense of belonging at our school. And we noticed the last 2 years our data went down a bit, and we're wondering, well, what is this from? And as we dug into the questions, we noticed that the relationship that students feel between staff and students is very strong. We have a caring staff, very nurturing. But what we've noticed is that some of our, and the data's on 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, they feel not as strong of a sense of belonging with their peers. And then we started to think about, we have the PACE program the last couple of years, and we have a lot of 4th and 5th graders coming in to a new school in 4th and 5th grade, and how that can make them maybe feel like, how do I belong here? That's, an older age to move in. And so we've started doing some streetwise data and connecting with those kids and asking them, what could we do at our school to help you connect more with friends or kids and students? And so some of the ideas I've already gotten from kids is a lunch bunch group or something to help them connect and make friends right away, because it can be hard as an older student to come into a new school. So that's been really good. So something for us to continue to focus on. We know our relationships with staff and students are going well, but how do we help those new students that are coming in to feel a part of that too? So that's been really great and exciting for us to see. And then as far as ELA goes, we've been working really hard on ECRI. We've got a great, strong foundational core group of teachers and students that have been working on that and excelling. We're still continuing to grow in that. We do pre-teaching for our students that are struggling. We know it's research-based, and so some of our students need maybe a double dip with the sounds or the letter sounds and recognition, and so they're practicing that before they get it in the classroom. And then some of them, they're also getting a second practice after the classroom that maybe need that. But what we've been working on as far as growth in ELA is, what do we do during the wind time? So we don't have a curriculum that teachers are following that's research-based for that wind time. So we know that we have to focus on what kids need. So we're looking at specifically what does each group of students need. Our teachers have met in grade bands, talked about, okay, what are you working on for, we know that the students that are below, we know exactly what we're doing because we do have some curriculum for that, but what about the kids that are just right at grade level? What about the kids that we need extensions for, because we have a lot of gifted students at our school? How do we continue to excel with the different levels? And so that's been some great work our teachers have been doing. And then as far as math goes, we have some teachers that do a really great job with mathematical mindset. When they did take the TD training that you heard about before, not all of our teachers have had that training, and so at our next CW, we have 3 teachers that are going to be presenting on mathematical mindset, math talks with our staff. It's really great to see our teacher leaders helping one another grow in that area. So I'm really excited about that as well. And then what makes us unique at Purdy is what you heard from Todd, is the arts infusion. We continue to work on how do we infuse art into what our students are learning by using grade level standards. And so it really aligns also with what we're doing with UDL. Students are showing and demonstrating their knowledge on a certain learning skill or target through the arts, whether it be a performance, visual arts. Some students write a poem, sing a song. It's been really great to see students grow in that area as well. So thank you for your time.
All right, at Artendale, we have such an amazing community of students and families and staff. And our strengths, building off last year, we're really proud of our ELA scores that we did in Smarter Balance. And that's because last year, and it's kind of our motto for this year, we live and breathe literacy. So we do our summer reading program where students have a log where they can practice reading during the summer, and then they bring it back and they can get a free book. So this summer, we had 87 students bring back their summer reading log. They're trying to do 1,000 minutes. We are in our second week of our now annual readathon. So far as a school, we have 100,000 minutes and 361 minutes, sorry. And so that's also a fundraiser too, but it used to be a spellathon years ago before COVID, and really that wasn't equitable for all students and all those different research, behind that. So this is our second year flipping it to a readathon, and it's been really successful, and just promoting that literacy in our building. Our master schedule also is a big driver of our success, and so every single minute counts in our schedule, and so we have large literacy blocks that are dedicated to whole group, small group instruction, really making sure students are understanding what they're learning and why it's important. And then we also have that separate win time like we mentioned earlier. Every time we have our data cycles, then we have RTI meetings, and we really drill down and really look at what students need the support, who needs the enrichment, what can we do in order to provide that for them. And then the kind of next step for us is really looking at that progress monitoring. So what are we doing to ensure that where our kids are making that growth or they're not? Why not? Do we need to try a different intervention? Do we need to try a different curriculum? Do we need to try a different resource? We've tried to integrate multisensory too, that we know that is really important for instruction and literacy. So that's our strengths in ELA, and our next step is just that progress monitoring to on-go, which really aligns with our new SIP plans because it's coming back to it every 6 weeks, right, and refining it and really doing that. Math is our next step that we're doing as a whole building. It's dipped down a little bit in our scores, and so that's something that our whole staff said. In literacy, we have these win blocks for students to really differentiate and help support them. What if we had math win blocks? So that came from our staff. So we built in win blocks for also math intervention, where again, we kind of flood in support with parent volunteers, other people that are available, the teachers working with our students, and teachers are brainstorming what are resources, how do we look at the core curriculum, what are those reteaching practices that we can go ahead and do. So that's the next step for us with math, and also like the other buildings mentioned too, we're getting back to those number talks, those math accountable talk moves that students can do, so that they really understand the math and can explain it and articulate it and go deeper with their understanding. And then our SEL, we looked at that sense of belonging, and so we made a commitment this year is to greet every student at the door, not just in the hallway, not just talking to each other, but to give them that undivided attention and make that eye contact and greet them by name. And we already got 2 parents that noticed, and they said, thank you so much. It just felt so welcoming. We really believe in that. Students go the long way to get to 5th grade, and they'll go back and see their kinder and their 1st grade and their 2nd grade teacher. So everyone's really enjoying that strategy that we're trying. And I think that's it.
Hi, good evening. Delana from Discovery. And I am really thrilled to share with you some of the great projects that we're doing over at Discovery right now. So of course we are continuing with Arts Impact and doing Arts Infused Lesson. And as my other 2 partners said, it's a great program that helps us infuse arts into the core standards. And as we look at that, and opportunities around it, we really like to nest things and have multiple projects that impact students in a variety of ways. So one of our wonderful teachers, Jen Jones, proposed to the whole school that we all read the same book. So right now we are all reading Mouse on the Motorcycle. Read along with us. This is our first week, and it is a school-wide impact. So we will have some students creating a play, performing in that play. Just one chapter, by the way. It's a pretty complex thing. And then our music teacher is working with students to write songs. We have a whole catalog of arts-infused activities that students and teachers can do, just focused on that one area. Because our goal is that our students love reading. We want our families to know our commitment to literacy and reading, so it goes back and forth between the home and school. And it also, that sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger. So when this project came along and we looked at our goals, it just seemed perfect. So that's been a really great activity for us. And then also about, I think it was about a year ago, one of our teachers found this program to help her learn more about early literacy and phonics. And she presented to our BLT, she wanted to go to this training. And we agreed, and we sent her and some of the other teachers, and that was the letters training, which is a training now that quite a few of our teachers in the district are doing. So we are excited to continue in that and continue in the leadership of that also throughout the building, because that early literacy, the phonics, we need to make sure that all of our teachers have access to the right information for our students. And then we also have been working also, of course, on Math Talk, because we know that being able to converse about what you know increases understanding and retention of that information. So as we build those structures of how to have math conversations, a lot of our teachers who, again, did the TGG training understand how to pull out those essential elements of a lesson so students can identify what they need to know and how they're going. So we are excited for all of those. We also have just some fun little things that we have happening around the school around sense of belonging. We have would you rathers every week that every classroom is committed to doing, and it's just to have a class conversation to get students talking to each other whom they might not normally talk with. So in our strengths, one of the wonderful things I'm just bursting in my seams of pride about the progress at Discovery is again, about a year ago, we were looking at our numbers, and man, we've been working so hard to bring these students up, and they were not at grade level. They were not yet at grade level. We were so disappointed. And Abby Davis, our lab teacher, started looking at the data, and she said, "You're right, they're not at grade level, but they've grown a year and a half. They've grown 2 years. So even if a lot of our students aren't quite at grade level yet, they were making huge gains. And so, especially from the impact of COVID and everything that happened, to see those huge gains right away. So our teachers are excited to continue with that. One of the strengths of that was our what I need time or win time, when students get the individualized support that they need. So we're going to build off that strength and keep going with it. Thank you.
Good evening. I don't know what to say that they haven't already said. I guess that's the beauty and the curse, right, of going towards the end. But I'm here to speak about Pioneer this evening and all the things that we're super proud of. And just reflecting on my colleagues and what they have to share, I feel like, you know, some of the things that make us unique are our strengths, but they're also our areas of growth. We opened in a pandemic, as you all know, which curtailed everything we thought we were going to be able to do, but something that makes us unique is our project-based learning model. And because we have a project-based learning model, we really focus on that integrated learning, with science being our driving guide, our driving focus for what we're doing, but having to be so explicitly intentional about those writing and reading standards that we're embedding into that. We do embed math standards when it's appropriate, but there are a lot of foundational math standards that students just need to be taught in isolation versus trying to integrate multiplication into a space unit, for example. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. So that's one of the things that makes us unique, is that when we launched our school, we had UDL as the focus for what we were doing. How do we design our units? How do we design each lesson as an opportunity so that every single student has access? We want to make sure that that is actually one of our core principles, is the idea of equity, which is access to opportunity for every single student. And not every single student is a reader yet. And so might we have digital text that reads it to them? Might we have infographics? Might we structure our spaces in our classrooms where we can learn from each other through shared experiences? So that's one thing that has made us unique. A strength of that is it's proving to work. Our 5th graders that we sent on to middle school this past year, 85% of them, 84% of them were proficient on the SBA, which is pretty remarkable from that group of kiddos, watching them go through. We get asked all the time, what is your evidence? What is your proof of those kiddos moving on to middle school? Our first graduating class of Pioneers, only 7th graders right now. So I don't know that we're going to see that progression as we continue to move forward. In addition to the project-based learning piece, I would say we have to be very, very knowledgeable of standards. And so we've done a lot of work diving into what those standards mean. We do standard ladders where if we take a reading informational standard, what does that look like at kindergarten? What does that look like at 5th grade? And then we break it down so that we understand that progression for students. And that's going to help our teachers then design that with the research-based strategies and materials, making sure that they can then provide the intervention or scaffold for students to have access to that information. One of the areas of focus that Pioneer is really working on is that now transition to math, much like my colleagues have talked about, math talks, math discourse, bringing in some experience from our TDG training pre-COVID. We're really looking forward to that. This year we've structured our PD around math, and again, looking at those standards around operations in base 10, looking at those standards in fractions, and what does that mean, and what does that structure need to look like, and then how do we tell that story of our students having met that standard, because it's not always going to be a pencil paper test. So how do we know where our students are at? I think another uniqueness to us being a magnet school, that sense of belonging piece. Our data, when that first year of COVID, we had really high scores in sense of belonging, which we were like, you're not even on campus. Like, you've never even met your teacher in person. And then since then, it's kind of gone down. And students and families have expressed, this is challenging for my student because we came from Evergreen, or we came from Vaughn, or we came from Voyager. We have students from all over, so that we don't have that neighborhood feel. So I feel like sometimes we have to work a little extra hard to have that sense of belonging. And the conversations we've been having with our staff right now are, what does that mean to students? We can infer what it means to us to belong in a school system as an adult, but what does that actually mean for the students who are in the seats? And so we've been talking about this first 6 week is really kind of, as Abby shared, that structure of learning, right? How are we making sure our master schedule reflects our priorities? How are we making sure we're doing those morning meetings for connections? How are we making sure second step is taught into our classrooms? But as we continue to build out, we have visions of, starting a student leadership or student council or student advisory where they are asking these questions of their peers. What is going to help you feel a sense of belonging? Because I know that I'm going to feel a sense of belonging different than perhaps Director West. And so not making assumptions about what that means to students is part of our goal this year as well. I think that's all I have for tonight. That was my cue. Did you see that? Thank you.
All right, good evening. One of the things that I've been at Evergreen 11 years. It's the longest I've ever been in any job. So I love being there. One of the things that I noticed that I think is still unique to us is just that sense of collective efficacy. We used to be in the smallest school in the district, but we're keep growing, it seems like. So we may need to build on. Just saying. But one of the things, like this year, one of the things that we're all working together on is oral language development with our students. We know that with some of our students, that low literacy coming out of the home, that how can kids think creatively? How can they have math talks? How can they do those things if they don't have the oral language development? So that's one of the things we're even talking about, like everybody doing their student growth goal around that. We're working on that together. Integration continues to be one of our keys. We know that if our kids have just all these separate silos of learning, they can't make those connections. They don't come with always the opportunities maybe that other students have. So we know they've got to make those connections, and when they make those strong connections between what they're learning, that's a really critical piece. When we had Heather Jones a few years ago as our integration support specialist and she left, I'm like, oh, what are we going to do? We found Amy Barber. When Amy retired, we're like, what are we going to do? Now we have Wendy Moore. So I appreciate Ellie letting her come to us. Wendy's just brought new ideas, fresh ideas about some of that integration. She even has some ideas about, like, what if we tied in with some of the the history of the native tribes in the area, and we really did oral language, just storytelling. And our kids told the story of what they're doing. out at Evergreen and some of the work we're doing. So we've just got these fresh ideas, and people rally around those ideas, and everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. We'll all do it together. So that's a really important strength for us. One of the things that we talk about a lot, and you probably, if you come in our school, you've seen the sign, how will you make Evergreen a better place? That's something that we push. We model that for the kids. We talk to our kids all the time about it. Along with Second Step, we're doing a monthly character trait. My success coach, not my dean of students anymore, but we were able to, Christy Dalby is now our success coach, and she's working closely with our Bethany McDermott, our counselor, and they've started like a 5th grade leadership team and group, and we're just trying to find these ways for kids to have more voice and increases that sense of belonging, and it just really covers all areas. So now I'll talk about some of the areas that we're looking at for growth, certainly with kids, matching those tier 2 interventions with some of our students. We know that kids aren't widgets, and every child comes in and they're unique, and we've got to figure out that puzzle of what they need. We've got our teachers are constantly working. We've got everybody in our primary, and I know that's because I know this is similar to all schools. If we could have, I'll bet we could have had 160 people signed up for letters training if we'd had enough slots. We were fortunate that we were able to get all of our K through 2 signed up for that. And we know that the more skills we have, the more strategies we have, the better we can meet those kids' needs. So that's an area that we know we need to continue working on, is how do we find what that child needs and get them the learning that they need. And so we've got teachers that have done on their own, have done a lot of work with Haggerty. I know Lisa worked with our lab teachers, but we have a lot of our teachers who are doing a lot of work with Haggerty and just using every strategy they know to try and build those kids up and help them grow in their literacy development. Math, we know that it's hard for kids to talk about math if they don't have the oral language skill development, so we're tying that together. We're doing math talks. Sounds like every other school is doing math talks too. It's a great opportunity for kids to learn and be able to communicate that and do that work together and have that kind of collective efficacy that kids have working around that. And for sense of belonging, we are doing a lot of different things. That 5th grade leadership team group. Every 5th grader in our school is on one leadership team or another. We just had some kids doing the recycling. We had other kids handing out backpacks for kids, food backpacks for kids when it's time to go home on Friday. We have students that are problem solvers out on the playground. They help kids with problem solving. We just have, like every day we have kids who, they don't work in the cafeteria, but they come in and they help clean up the cafeteria, so we're just getting kids helping, and kids love helping, right? Even when we were doing some of our restorative justice a couple of years ago, and we might be having kids help sweep up some gravel that kids might trip on. As a restorative justice piece, like the next recess, they'd be like, can I do that again, right? Kids feel, when they feel valued and they feel like they're contributing, it just changes who they are. And so we're always really pushing that. How can you make Evergreen a better place? And whenever kids maybe don't make the best choice, and I ask them, didn't they make Evergreen a better place? I've never had a kid say yes. They always know, and they always say, no, I need to do this, right? And so they own that, and I think that's just such a critical piece for kids growing with that sense of belonging. I think that's it. Thank you.
I'm David Brooks at Swiftwater. Natalie Boyle talked about our new school improvement plan and the connections to the strategic plan, and just wanted to share some perspective of what does that mean for us in schools. And tonight we had our building leadership team meeting, so I posed that question to them. What does school improvement look like? How is that different this year? And a couple of things 3 points that came across was, it's really exciting to see that our vision for our school is really aligned to that strategic plan. It feels like our work is in the same direction. They talked about our smaller chunks of looking at this 45-day plan that we've kind of set end of October as that first focus. And they're excited about that smaller chunk of time and looking at it and figuring out what do we do next in terms of that plan, do, study, act piece. And the third point they talked about in their professional learning communities, their grade level teams or their teams, that it's connected, it's they're on the same page. We've got that same focus. So the arrows are all going in the same direction. So that was pretty exciting to hear my leadership team say, these are the connections that we have with our school improvement plan. And just thinking about that it feels authentic, it feels real time, and it's not just something that we put on a piece of paper and we revisit once the scores come out. So it's a work in progress. So that, I think that's pretty exciting, and I think that I probably speak for all of our teams in terms of that process. What makes Swiftwater unique, we're 2 years old. We're still growing. We opened at 391, and today we added 2 more kids and are at 519. So we're growing. We are unique in terms of our vision is becoming a welcoming community of learners, and just figuring out how do we connect and engage our families, which you see when this is a hub of activity from soccer or PAA every night to bicyclers riding scooters. And tomorrow we're encouraging everyone to walk, ride, or scooter because it's National Walk to School Day. So thank you for the extra bike racks. We actually had 85 bikes the other day. And my guess is tomorrow we'll have more than that. But we are growing, and we are trying to figure out how do we get everyone connected. Last year we added our options program. So just thinking about diversity and how do we help all kids feel connected to this school. So that's kind of a unique part about us. Just thinking about our 3 goal areas under literacy, probably that professional development piece is the one that I'm most proud of. We've got a lot of teachers learning about those foundational skills. How do we get those routines set for our kids and help kids have that foundational skill piece? But we also have the letters training, and the last 2 weeks, our team of about 9 or 10 have met on their own to do a book study together. And I've had teachers that have come up and said, best professional development, working with my team. I learned so much from working with a partner versus just going through the online lessons. So really excited about that. Math is an area that we're still kind of figuring out where do we grow into. We've been taking a look at how do we use Envisions, and in our conversations it's like, well, there is a mental math piece in that, and had teachers talking about, well, how do we tie in our number talks into that? How do we use that mental math piece and have some strategies that support using our Envision curriculum? Then for belonging, I think probably the thing that really ties into our vision is that how do we empower and inspire students to take ownership for their learning? So thinking about that first unit and second step is kids taking some ownership on what's their goal for these next 4 weeks until conference time. How many kids will we have come to conferences with their parents and be part of that engagement piece so that they are actually being empowered? So those are our goals. They align, and that's what we're excited about. They do align, and I think when you look at all of our vision and mission statements across the 10 elementaries, we are on that same page. So I'm really excited about the work ahead, and excited about the challenges too. So thanks.
All right, I'm proud to be the anchor tonight for this amazing group of educators I get to work with and the dedicated staff in my building. I just want to start by saying teaching is a profession like none other. It's very noble work, and I know you recognize that. And we take our jobs very seriously. And so I'm really excited tonight as I get to talk about the 3rd year at Harbor Heights, what's going well, and what are some of our goals in the year ahead. So when I think about ELA and what I am most proud of as a staff, I'm not sure if you have yet seen the Elementary Pathways to Reading document. Perhaps it was referenced at a prior board meeting, but we spent a lot of time digging into that, both in our pre-service days and our most recent Collaboration Wednesday. And the success around that is really talking about what is our guaranteed and viable curriculum that we have as a district, what are our resources, and how are we using them for and with our students every day. And so I partnered with Kelly Pruitt, and we walked through some of these levels of the pathway with learner profiles, and I'm really excited to hear that that is actually what all of our staff, our elementary teachers that are not in letters training are going to be doing on the release day, or the professional learning day on the 9th. We're really proud of our work, implementing ECRI, using the best tools in Reading Wonders to meet the needs of our students, and that strong partnership that we've developed. We have a strong start this year. We have a lot of new staff, so we have a new psychologist, a new deputy administrator, but our staff that have partnered and rallied around what is literacy education going to look like at Harbor Heights this year include our lab teacher and, of course, our grade level teachers. And so we just talked today at our BLT meeting around the first 6-week cycle of growth and what those growth goals will look like for students, how we'll measure them, how we'll partner with each other, and how we'll have a supportive instructional plan for each grade level and each student to meet our SIP goals. A growth area for us in literacy is just time to plan intentionally the win groups for the students that need the most support, and on the other end, the students that need the enrichment and acceleration. So we're going to be focusing on that this year. In math, using Envisions and having teams discuss what components of math instruction they want to focus on for the formative assessments to guide their work, making small groups within our daily block of math. We've dedicated 60 minutes of math a day, but even within that, how are we structuring small groups to meet students' needs in math? So we've been starting that work this year. And so that continues to be a growth area as well, both a success and a growth area. I would say for SEL, starting my principalship during the pandemic, and watching how we've grown as a school over the last 2 years has been inspiring. And so we started off the year in our pre-service days really getting a strong foundation in Tier 1, our social, emotional, academic learning commitments as a staff. What are we committing to? And so we've committed to a reinforcement system, acknowledging students for following the ORCA way, which is be respectful or be responsible and be resourceful. Having our both school matrix and our classroom matrices posted in the classroom, outside of the classroom, in our hallways, and really being all in on what it means to be following the ORCA way in all of our common spaces in our school, our lunchroom, our hallways, our playground, our restroom, our assemblies. How will we be as a school community together? We also decided as a staff to invest in what's called Purposeful People. It's the K-5 component to Character Strong, which is the middle school, high school program. And our staff really wanted to use it for the character word of the month. And so we really focused on respect last month. This month it's responsibility. And every month there's a focus that we celebrate on morning announcement, that we recognize with our students, and we are intentionally teaching them what that means to how to be that way at school and in their life. So that's been a really great success over the last couple years. Also with the second step, we made some commitments at our pre-service days around our focus for the first unit of second step and why we are all teaching it and all using that same language so that students have consistent and successful experiences, whether they're in their grade level classroom or specialist classroom or lab classroom, if they're in a lab group. What does that mean to have a growth mindset or solve problems or those identified concepts within second step? So I also really want to thank you for your support at Harbor Heights for the walking path. If you ever have a chance and you want to come by and see our school at recess, I'd invite you, and I'd come and you can see our students either walking, running, or rolling on the track. And I'm also really proud to say we partnered my amazing school language, or excuse me, SLP, speech language pathologist. Sorry, I'm the anchor, so it's the end of the night. Our speech language pathologist, we really had an authentic conversation around how to teach kids how to interact with students that might not have the same accessibilities they do, whether it's speech or mobility, how to use pictures to ask students if they want to play. So our SLP wrote a grant to get communication boards in all of the playgrounds across the district so that students have interactive ways to talk and communicate when they play. We know that the pandemic and some of the isolation that happened during that time has impacted our students' ability to connect with their peers and feel comfortable with themselves initiating play. And so we'll be rolling that out this next month. Those boards, those communication boards just arrived. So I just wanted to thank you for your support in that. And our growth area really will be using the panorama data this year to guide our tier 2 support groups, whether that's the counselor, the deputy principal, myself. We are one of the schools that has the Communities in Schools program. And so how we partner with that resource to really just support the whole child is one of our growth goals this year. So thanks for letting me be the anchor. These are amazing educators I get to work with every day. And I'm really proud of our staff at Harbor Heights. So thank you.
So, questions for our principals?
So, as you look through this information, the data is not good because we've seen a downturn in several things. And if I'm reading this right, so I'm going to ELA, and so I'm seeing the 2022 data and then the beginning of 2023. And for reading in particular, most all of the numbers are down, going from 2022 to 23. Am I reading that correct?
You can go to that slide. Is this what you're referring to?
Yeah. So I'm looking at the 2022 and then the beginning, which you call A, 2023.
So that's spring 2023 SBA data. So that's our most recent SBA data compared to the spring 2022
so we
SBA
went
data.
Down.
Right. So
in most categories, in most.
Can I offer some insight to that?
Sure.
So one of the things that you're not going to see in numbers here is what happened in 22, what they did as a state, and we looked at the SBA.
Okay.
Prior to COVID, we had a really inclusive Smarter Balance assessment where we could get 4 different reading, writing, like we had very, what's the word I'm looking for? Strand, thank you. We had very specific strand data where teachers could use that to specifically instruct the following year. In 2022, it went away. And what it had was, it was a very shorter test. It was very small. It became less of a reading test and more of a writing assessment. And it really asked the kids to just take one set of data, and we got one lump score. So teachers aren't really able to access this data anymore in a way that's particularly useful. So though we look at this and we recognize these numbers are really important, it's the iReady and the DIBELS data for us that's going to dive deeper for us.
Okay.
And so you might not see such a trend in iReady, especially in DIBELS. What you're going to see first and foremost, K through 3, and as we move up, is you're going to see that increase in DIBELS, because that's our ECRI work. That's saying, can kids actually read? And K through 3, we want to know, can they read it? So that when they get 3 through 5, they're starting to understand what they read. They're able to communicate what they read. And unfortunately, as much as I love SBA and I love the idea that we have this common assessment for everybody, it's just not that useful yet until we better understand what they did when they slimmed it down. That help you with it?
Okay. So moving forward, it should be consistent. So when we look at 23 to 24, that will be a consistent.
Yep, same thing.
There'll be
same
more.
thing. Okay.
But as she said, it is both a reading and a writing test. The best measure we have for reading for elementary is DIBELS. And our end-of-year DIBELS scores for last year were fairly significantly higher than the year before.
Okay. Okay. So then also when I look at this data, the next thing I see is the Key Peninsula middle school, or the schools, elementary schools, are all at the bottom. Why is that? Why are all those schools at the bottom?
Our hope is that every school has a growth plan and is focused and is going to hit the goals for these each year. So they're going to be going into classrooms together as a Key Peninsula group. That will help them kind of get to discuss and calibrate together.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, those schools are going to be working together to get their scores up. But district-wide, everyone's got those goals that we see that we have to meet. And we're going to get there.
So Chuck, can I reframe an answer?
Sure.
Okay. So I think the important thing that when I look at this is, what is it that is inhibiting our students to be successful on the SBA, and who are our non-readers? What resources do we have? I know that is the conversation with the principals. Anytime we look at socioeconomic data, or we look at culture of poverty data, or we look at accessibility for families, we don't want to compare necessarily one group to another, right? Because all children come to us the way they come to us. We are a public school, whether they had rich literacy lives and their parents were reading to them in the womb, versus if they're EL families that, don't speak English at home. And so I think what I would hope that we as a school district really focus on when we're talking about literacy is, do we have the tier 1, do we have the curriculum, do we have the supports around it? What you're hearing today, what I'm hearing today is ECRI now is really looking at the fidelity of ECRI and how it's going to impact our youngest learners, which I would say a couple years ago, we did not have that structure. So the hope is that we have less and less struggling readers, and that we have better and better resources to intervene at the tier 2, tier 3 support. What we don't want to do is categorize certain regions or areas. And I just say this being a superintendent, being a former educator in a high urban school district, and I was a principal of a very high needs school. And what I always said is, I want to take care of the kids that are in front of me and the families that are in front of me, and making sure that I have the best resources. So when we talk about, because your question was, why are scores in a certain area lower? I think there's a multitude of reasons. This probably wouldn't be the venue to have those conversations, but I think what I hear from the principals sitting in those chairs is that each and every child, we only have certain assessments. And thank you, Abby, for specifying that. What it used to look like is very different than what it looked like. And I know I've spoken to that as well, the strand data that we could go and dig down in. And I'm not 100% sure that we have all of the other resources, right? The tier 2, tier 3 supports that we need to get kids to that level. So that is the work that they are doing out there with the kids that we have. With the tools that we have now, if we find that the tools, like if you use a hammer for every single job, and then you find out, you know what, there's something better than a hammer, maybe a big jackhammer that's, electric, and we can afford that, then that's what we want to get.
An example of that for our interventions, we have training tomorrow and the next day with some of our teachers on Seeing Stars, which is one of our intervention programs. So we are still working on getting everyone trained on those intervention pieces. And if you look at what are those action plans that are in the SIP plans, they're going to be walking through together to say, are our kids getting that initial tier 1 instruction? Then are they being grouped into their what I need groups? And then are our teachers trained to give them what they need at that next level for tier 2 and tier 3? We're working on that. That is part of the process, but that's happening in all the schools, and it's going to raise the scores for KP and everywhere else.
It is. So what you're telling me is you're working on it, basically. We're recognizing what's there, and it just Yeah, I can follow that conversation elsewhere. So I guess the other question I had was dealing with dyslexia. And we're looking at the reading scores. Is the ECRE program working for the dyslexic kids? Or what are we doing?
So we know that students that show signs of dyslexia need explicit and strategic instruction with those phonemic early awareness and literacy. And that's what ECRE addresses. That is not something that is part of our Reading Wonders curriculum, and that's why we have this supplemental curriculum that supports that instruction. As John said earlier, we are seeing scores especially in our K2, where they have had now 2 full years of ECRE literacy instruction across the board. We are seeing those scores raise across the board. Each individual student is a piece of the puzzle, and what works for one student isn't the same thing that works for the next student, because every student learns differently. And so what you heard what you heard principals here talk about is taking that data and really honing in on what each individual students need and making sure we have the intervention materials to be able to support that. And that's new for our process within the last couple of years.
I'm just going to say thank you. I know you guys are working on it.
We are, and I was so excited to hear. I think that letters piece is a huge piece, as I will reiterate, and I think my colleagues will do as well. I have an graduate degree in education. I have a master's degree in reading, and it was all based on a balanced reading. And so it's not anything I got in my undergraduate education. And as lifelong learners, as educators, we are constantly learning as the science develops, and we know better, we do better. And so we are all working to make sure to support our teachers in doing a better way of instruction.
Yeah.
And it takes time, but we are learners, and we're excited to engage in the work.
I'll pass on and let somebody else.
Well, first off, I really want to extend my thanks and gratitude to everybody. Natalie, you led off with what a big shift this was, and that's not lost on any of us. This is a huge shift. It's like a hard rudder over from what we've been doing for years, but hopefully this was the hardest move, and then it's more just some smaller course corrections as we move forward. And I was really encouraged and happy to hear that, at least, from quite a few of you, that it feels like we're starting to all now row in the same direction. And I think, from my position, that there couldn't be more we could ask for. So thank you all so much for, even if this is, I could only imagine it has been a bit painful to get here, but hopefully we're through the big hump, right? And from my perspective, I really appreciate being able to kind of have a little bit more of the bird's eye view, and then hear from each of you how that directly impacts. I appreciate your candor about where you're focusing on what you still need to work on, and I appreciate you bringing that, because we don't know what we don't know on this end, and so I think that being honest is really brave and shows confidence that you've identified it and you're working on it. So what I hope is that a lot of this cycle, the 6-week cycle, is fantastic, right? This ability to not have to wait. What I'm hoping is that you feel supported in how we're not just gathering data for data's sake, but the right kind of data in the right amount of with the right amount of effort to go into it. I know one of the things in my professional life that drives me crazy is when I'm having to spend more time dealing with the software than dealing with my actual work, or I'm having to deal with the bean counting rather than the actual work. So I just hope that part of your process is able to get feedback to the district we're all collaborating here, that it's not all just a numbers game, that it's specific numbers that actually have meaning, if that makes any sense. So we're not just, spending all day gathering data. Anyway, enough of the monologue. A couple questions. This is the first time I've heard of this kind of the math talks, and I'm just curious about kind of where that came about. And I know it sounds fantastic, because I couldn't agree more about, like, conceptually, if you can explain it, then you must understand it better. Is that?
So when the principals were together in August and we're deciding, we have obviously a huge lift still in reading, and that was going to be a priority. But we also know, based on our data and what we've seen, that we have to start moving towards some of the things that are going to make a difference in math. So we went back and looked at some of the pieces that had made the biggest difference. What are the most high leverage strategies in math instruction that we could focus on? And we did kind of a dive into that and came to a collective agreement that we all felt that Math Talk was the one place, that mathematical discourse was going to be the place that we could get the most bang for our buck. As we look at our curriculum, as we look at other things that we can do to ramp up math in the coming year, next year and beyond, but this is one that we felt like we could do this year to kind of help move things.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, because I know when I'm helping my child with math, and I want her to talk out kind of her logic and her reasoning, that can be the difference in, I have a child who performs well in math and one that's a little more intimidated, and it is very evident in their ability to talk about it. So it's really encouraging that everybody's moving towards that. What was the other one? Oh, I just have to do a shout out to Discovery. I didn't quite I saw the social media post on how everybody's doing the mouse and the motorcycle. Now I understand it. That is so cool. This, I think particularly coming out of COVID, this like longing we all have to have this sort of collective experience, right? And the way that enables us, like families, to get engaged with it too, and kind of the broader community, and then have that touch point in common. I think that's really a really cool idea. So thank you for sharing that. And I mean, I really appreciate hearing everything about each school. I know it was only 5 minutes, but it still feels like I certainly got a sense of what unique stuff is going on in each building. But that stood out to me as being extremely cool. Let's see, what was my other question? Oh, somebody mentioned about, or maybe it was you, John, that with regard to the science data, that every school gets at least once a week a STEM specialist, but some get more. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sometimes if they have some extra specialist time, they'll do a rotation, like what they call a waterfall. So I might get, every third week, I get an extra dose of STEM.
Right.
Something
okay.
like that.
That's like, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I wasn't sure if there was like a secret stash of extra science specialists. Yeah. Let's see, there was one more. I'm sorry, my notes are kind of scribbled, but I'll pause. But thank you all. That was really helpful. It was, and I really, really encouraged of us all kind of moving in the same direction right now. So big kudos and big thanks.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming, and it has been massively different than in the past, but I really appreciated the format, and just it's really so much fun to hear briefly from every single school, and just to appreciate and celebrate the differerences and the successes and all that. I wrote down something that I loved from every single school. Just a couple I wanted to mention that stuck out to me. Vaughn, I love the consistency of behavior expectations. Interestingly, we heard from high school students when we were discussing the cell phone policy, that what they really were asking for was consistency, or could it just be enforced by someone, and could it be all the same? And I thought, isn't that interesting? That is what, not that everyone enjoys it, but it is what, makes people feel better about, and belonging. So that is, I really appreciated that. Mentor, I love the discussion about making sure everyone has a trusted adult, because it's so important. And your scores are so high in belonging, so that's noteworthy. And I love the fifth grade leadership teams at Evergreen. I think that's a really great thing, that to put every kid, give them a role and you know, a sense, it also goes to sense of belonging, and the place doesn't function if I don't do my job. So those are all great things. I also saw the video from the Mouse and the Motorcycle today, loved it. And then one other shout out, and then just a couple questions. This is really random, but I happened to be driving along the other day, and speaking of tomorrow being National, what is it, Ride Your Bike to School Day or something, and I came to a stop out here by the roundabout, at which point I saw that David Brooks himself was the crossing guard, allowing all of the children to safely cross the street, and I just thought that was awesome. I don't know if that's something you always do or if you were filling in for somebody, but it's fun to see just the hands-on leadership. And
Can't you send us all a picture?
What'd you say? Anyway, and there was a sea of children walking across the street. So anyway, so I appreciate so many things that I loved about what was shared. But I think I asked this before, maybe every year. How are the goal percentages determined? Because they're vastly different, and I know if I just can't imagine the strategy that is employed. Everyone knows they have to get here, and for some that's farther than for others. I get that part. But is it a mix of, optimism and, likelihood, or what,
It is straight up math.
Okay.
So what we did as a district was we took the score that the SBA represented in the spring of 2023 minus 100%, and then divided that to the number of years we have until 2026. So it is straight up math. To get to that 100% by 2026, what is that growth you have to make every single year in order to be on track to make 100%? So straight math.
That clears it up. It makes it more easy to understand. And what someone was, I think it was Katya, you were super honest about feeling like it's a little bit of a struggle to have interventions in 3 through 5, which I really appreciated that. And I'm just wondering, I see the board's role, obviously not to micromanage, but certainly to support, and just wanting to make sure, what can happen to facilitate interventions. Or I'm not even totally sure what I'm asking, which shows my extreme lack of knowledge of how this all works, but
Yeah, I think the challenging part really comes when we have students in 4th or 5th grade who really do not have those basic phonics skills. Where do we find the time to serve those students? How can we utilize lab services that are typically meant for younger kids to support those students, and what interventions are there? And there are some out there, but teachers are not necessarily familiar or comfortable with them, or have a good understanding of how they can incorporate that intervention time when there's such a huge gap between, 5th grade and where the student is. But so I don't know that I have an answer or even an ask really for you. It's definitely something that we're struggling with.
It's something also as a system. Allie showed that we call it the rainbow ombre document that has the pathways, and on that it's a worksheet for students or for teachers to work through based on their data. And so a teacher takes their DIBELS data, and then they group students based on their scores on those pathways. And within that column, it'll say if your student is needing these things, here are the interventions that we have within a district to be able to support that work. But with that comes a lot of professional learning for teachers as far as how to successfully provide those interventions. Again, every kid is a single piece of that puzzle and needs something a little bit different, as well as that time to work through the system and see that intervention, see the growth, do the plans, do, study, act. The intervention's not working. We have to come back to the drawing board and figure out something else. And that is strategic work that is happening, but it's new for our teachers as they work through that process.
I would say, just piggyback on that, our primary students are learning to read, and our intermediate are reading to learn, and so our intermediate teachers are more skilled at that piece of teaching literacy, the comprehension,
And that's a huge shift when we get to that point where those intermediate teachers have the skills, where they know where the resources are so that they can provide that. I taught middle school ELA for many years. And when I had a student, I was a reading to learn teacher. And if I had a kid who came in 7th or 8th grade and couldn't read, I sent them to another room. And that was the way it was done. So to be able to make that shift is huge, that say we're all reading teachers for all of our students.
No, I really appreciate that, because I think obviously you can't improve if you aren't aware, and identifying these kids and actually taking steps to address it before they leave elementary school is hugely important. So I might have a couple more, but.
I don't want to go over what everyone has already said, but I will, at least with the thank you piece. Like we've mentioned, this is just a very different process than what we've seen in the past. So thank you for your patience with getting to something that I think is actually a really, really excellent presentation and plan. I love to see our school goals aligning with the strategic plan. Like a lot of you mentioned, we're all moving in the same direction. Focus on academics and that belonging piece, I think, are so important. But I think this short cycle progress monitoring will be helpful. Ideally, we will provide you with the appropriate curriculum and supports. And I think when you're all working towards the same goals, you can start to recognize what our deficiencies are. And it is okay to say, we don't have what we need here. And I think identifying that is what's going to move the needle for a lot of students. And I think we know that we don't have the appropriate interventions for older students, especially when it comes to literacy and learning. And it's been a long time, it's been a long year of doing that research and learning. And there's a sense of urgency, certainly, to get it right, but I think there's a greater sense to get it right. So I think the work that you're doing here has identified that. So I am really grateful for the efforts here. And I just really like to see that you're all working towards something together, and that just to hear the common language. I know you guys talk together outside of these meetings, so it's probably not a surprise to you. But I hope that your staff has an opportunity also, third grade teachers from across the district, if they can start sharing some resources or what works. And ideally, we want to unburden staff from having to pull all these different pieces that work. So if we can come up with a collective strategy, intervention, curriculum, whatever it is that works, then I think we just allow our teachers to do what they do best, which is serve our students. I have one question. This is just going to be a kind of, I think an easy one. And I don't remember who said it. I want to say it was one of our earlier ones. Students have a choice on what they want to work on, whether it's word work or fluency. So my question is, do they know what they need to work on, or is this something? Yes, thank you. Is it?
And my flexible means.
Are they? Because I think my kids would pick what they like to work on.
No, yes. So we actually have our themes of the month too. So this month is goal setting, and so that actually goes into a student-led conferences, and they share their goals. And so we actually believe in students being empowered to self-select too, and they look at their iReady, they look at their Dibbles, and really unpacking that to say, oh, I need to work on vocabulary, I need to work on comprehension, or I need to work on phonics or things like that. So they're a part of it, and then the teachers sometimes guide them on certain things that they need to work on. Or I know even I used to have a checklist in my classroom, and I'd be like, oh, I noticed that you're always choosing read with a partner, word work, or vocabulary. We need to make sure we're doing those comprehension checks too, right? So it's working with them, and so that's a system we're trying to develop. And so sometimes it's just 2 choices right now, because we know it's only been 5 weeks, and so it's training students to do that too. And so that's our first step, is doing that goal setting and then self-selecting and figuring out how to meet that goal.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. I think that also aligns with our goal of having students work on grit and doing hard things and knowing they can. So, fantastic.
I'll just make a quick plug as well. As a reminder, Monday is a non-student day. It's our 3rd professional learning day of the school year. And this year, our elementary folks will be kind of split up based on the focus that they have. We have a group of teachers, our teachers that are going through the letters training. All 80 of them will be here in Swiftwater with a national letters trainer, helping them digest and understand. It's like a college course is heavy. And so helping them wade through some of that. We have arts impact training happening at 3 of our schools. And then the rest of our teachers are going to be working, just as you said, 3rd grade teachers together, collaborating, working through our frameworks, taking the district adopted curriculum and figuring out what are those high leverage pieces to focus on, and then what are the resources that we have district adopted to meet those needs. So it's timely and it's coming up on Monday.
Fantastic. All right. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Excellent, excellent. I'm really excited for this work. I know I speak for all of us. And I will share that
Natalie,
David-
may I ask, because the elementary had to go first, so they just want to know, is this the format?
Oh, I think this
And secondary better watch it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is it.
All right.
You guys knocked it out of the park.
Excellent. Excellent job, you guys.
Yeah, thank you. And listen, we would love to have you stay for the rest, but I know you have an early morning, so do not feel obligated. We'll take just a break while everyone shuffles. Do this right, we might be out of here by 8. We'll just say. Okay. Oh, yes, no cookies. All right. So, moving on to item 7, old business. We have on our agenda tonight a second read of a policy revision. This is our second reading of policy 2020, course design, selection, and adoption of instructional material. I have asked if we could table the vote on this. As you know, especially talking about it tonight, curriculum adoption is one of the most important pieces of work that the board can do. So this is a big change in the policy. It's also a big change in the procedure, which I know that we don't adopt. That is owned by the superintendent. But we wanted to have probably some more discussion about what our procedure is and what's the right way to do it. And because we do have that curriculum audit coming up in November, we felt that would be a better time to align it, give us some time to answer or to ask more questions. So I know we've already asked a lot, so thank you. Thank you to all of those who have emailed and answered. But I do want to open it up for discussion if anyone wants to talk about thoughts, or we can wait until November to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate being able to table it, because I think it has to be contextualized with the procedure a little bit. And I think certainly for me, even just hearing the SIPs is, and that kind of that whole sort of feedback of being able to, it's just making me think a lot more about, while policy, yes, should be broad, we don't want to hamstring ourselves. I think there are some things we want to codify in that we don't necessarily know yet. Like hearing from the principals and what they're hearing from their teachers makes me realize how important that piece is, maybe even in the audit process itself. And so once we are auditing, what do we have, what are we using? I think it'll make a lot more sense to review all of that and make sure they're all aligned. So thank you for deferring that so we can look at it comprehensively.
I think you're very wise to do that. I know I've talked with our teaching and learning group, and I think that when you see when things have been adopted and how potentially out of date they are, and balancing that with our fiscal reality of, if we could, would we adopt, multiple new curriculum when we have, especially elementary teachers, they teach math and, it's different in the high school, but they do math and literacy. And so I think for you to look at the reality of where we are at and what we have, coupled with, as we learn what best practices are and what curriculum is absolutely awesome, and that will be part of my report, I think it's a good time for you just to put a pause on that right now. Currently, right now, we're functioning under a policy already. This isn't a new policy, so there is work that needs to be done, and I know that our staff really needs to do some work, so they are continuing under the policy, and when you're ready to put it back on the table and to amend or approve, then we can go further. But I think you will be, well, I haven't seen it either, so I will be interested as well to see when and what curriculum we have at all levels.
Do we have to vote on tabling?
Yes, because you have.
Oh. Yeah, you did the training. Do we? So we can have motion to table the vote?
I make a motion that we table the vote.
Second. It's been moved by Chuck and seconded by Jennifer to table the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will revisit that next month. Okay, item 8, new business, is board committee reports. Does anyone have a committee to report out on? No, I will just briefly discuss, Legislative Assembly happened. David and I were the delegates for the Peninsula School District, so I'm happy to report that we were able to pass the amendment to the bylaws eliminating the weighted vote. So that was a big win for us. It was not without its fair share of drama and shenanigans that led to a pretty disruptive process for the rest of the Assembly. So to be very open and transparent, there will probably be more upcoming changes to bylaws. It seems like there are groups who are very unhappy about it, and then try to, I don't want to say, weaponize Robert's rules and how the rest of the meeting went about. So also, in full transparency, I was the voting delegate for everything other than that. David had to be out of town. I didn't feel comfortable voting on much of it because we as a board read through a handbook and we kind of make our decisions on what positions we are going to support or not support based on the information that we're given. But after the weighted vote or the elimination of the weighted vote passed, then every position then was heavily amended over and over and over, and they looked very different than what we had in our handbook. And I didn't feel comfortable as a voting delegate voting on things that the board hadn't seen. So if it was amended, we didn't vote on it. But these are not laws. These are just priorities for WASDA. So something to address. We have elections coming up for WASDA. David is on the slate as the vice president of WASDA, and I am the only person on the legislative committee for the resolutions committee for our district area 3. So it looks like that will probably be a go, and we'll see how it goes with the vice president role. So that's it for the Ledge Assembly. And we will move on to superintendent's report.
All right, I actually have quite a few things, so I'm going to go quickly here. I want to congratulate our elementary schools for going first with this SIP process. It's very apparent to me that they are working together. Coupled with our AWSP, so that's the organization for principals, we are doing every month-ish. We are partnering with Dr. Scott Seaman with our principals professional development. And as part of that, the work that they're doing now with their 6-week cycle, they are doing vertical walkthroughs with the assistant superintendents and their group, as well as mixed, correct? Elementary, middle, and high school. So they're getting into each other's classrooms and schools, and they're hearing about their problems of practice and where they are in the cycle of inquiry. So I'm really excited about that. I have to brag and say Scott Seaman, Dr. Seaman, was up in Anchorage this last week, and he was talking about the work that he was doing with Peninsula and said that there is a real market for having a real structured principal professional development at a time where the attrition and principals walking away from the job is very, very high. And so I'm looking forward to our work. This morning we were having a real conversation about how do we capture principal voice and leadership voice as they go through this work that is very different than what they were doing prior to, which was really more of a Lone Ranger approach. This is a very neatly coupled approach. And so how do we do that? So we anticipate that we are going to present at the AWSP WASA conference in the spring or in the summer, and that the principals will be able to have a voice and a part in that. Lots of open houses, so that is pretty exciting. Last night we had a combined career fair right across the street at the YMCA. Thank you, YMCA, for hosting us, all those people. And it was a Seahawks game and a rainy night, and there were loads and loads of both vendors and partners from both colleges and careers and skill centers and occupation. And boy, kids turned out and parents turned out. So that was an amazing effort, and I know that is under James Cantonwine at this time, so he and Stephanie as our new CTE coordinator. So, and there's so many other staff that were involved. I didn't write down everyone's name, but it was really amazing. So thank you for that. Today I had the opportunity, hence why I'm having jeans on, to be at the Gig Harbor High School breaking down the walls. Today was their day one, and Natalie, I know you'll probably speak to that, but pretty amazing and pretty powerful for kids. So I always support that. Just as an FYI, we submitted a letter to be considered for the Mastery-Based Learning Grant for the 3 Arts Impact Schools. It would be one of the very first elementary, certainly the first cohort in the state, if accepted. And John Helwick is spearheading that, so I want to thank him for that work. That will give money for the arts impact work, but also for the project-based learning work around mastery-based, and allow the staff to learn more about how to integrate that work. It's going to be an intriguing project, I would just say, because it's elementary, so it's not credit-based. Most of the mastery-based learning grantees are high schools, and they don't give credits or grades, so it's really for performance. So I'm excited about that opportunity. We submitted a 360 trail support for Key Pen letter, so looking forward to supporting them in those efforts, as well as really having a more inclusive partnership with Key Pen. And Chuck, thank you for your work. I see that we have some things on the books so that we can make sure that the Key Pen groups can be in our schools, as well as us having enhanced ability for us to be on their lands as well, because they have a lot of land and parks that we probably are not utilizing. So looking forward to that. There is a state of play report that is going to be coming out that was connected more with Pierce County around parks. But I just wanted to highlight the thing that jumped out at me is the lack of lights and turf, especially over here. We know that, but it will be mentioned in that report. And as soon as it's public, I will send it to you. This weekend is the Penn Met Scarecrow Festival, so looking forward to that. I'm bringing my 2 granddaughters. They have not been, so I'm very excited about the pumpkin chunkin' activity, as my husband is too. So excited about that. Tomorrow we have our first district parent PTA meeting, so I'm looking forward to seeing our parent representatives and the plan for this year. I just wanted to report out and brag a little bit about Chris. Chris has been on the AI communication circuit for the nation. Chris and I had an opportunity to be interviewed by a reporter, was it just last week? And we're doing amazing work. On our Focus on Education in November, it will be around AI K through 12 in Peninsula School District. And I have to tell you that people are very, very interested. So I just want to shout out to him. I know that he has really prepped me and will continue to prep me into the last moment November, I've been asked to talk to all the county government leaders over in Spokane. I'll fly over on that day and be on a panel representing Peninsula School District and the work that we are doing, and how county government leaders can use it in their own departments. So I could not do that without really smart teams and team members. Okay. I just wanted to report out two things. I had two meetings today that I think are just the entry meeting, but the first meeting was with the Hunt Institute and the state team that I'm serving on. At this point, there are 3 OSPI people. There is 1 assistant superintendent of learning, and then we have the deputy superintendent for OSPI. There's a WEA teacher rep, and there is Kristen Missel. I don't know her, Dr. Krista Missel from University of Washington, as well as our coach that's been identified for the state, which is Mary Dean Behringer, who's a very well-known coach in really the nation, and her expertise is the state context around literacy. So the work that we are going to be doing is really looking at early learning, both from the standards, but also any legislative work. So I had the opportunity to share, Maddie is the education consultant for the governor. I had an opportunity to share with her today. She said, Creston, what are you doing? I said, well, we are letters training. In fact, we are letters training next week. And the work that we have done around the literacy principles, not that we have, but the team has, and all of the work. Pretty impressive work. I feel like we are on the precipice of really being able to lean in and change literacy instruction, both for our district, but also for the state, around legislation as well. So we had a brief conversation about all of the states and the state legislators who have passed. We are in cohort 3, so we were I think that there were 8 states that applied. There were 6 states selected. And I have my first official meeting with them on October 11th, which is next week. So I sent a huge packet. I gave a copy to John and sent it to the teaching and learning team. But I'm looking forward to being able to, number one, be at the table. I'm very honored, but I'm also very passionate about this. I know that we have community investment. I was asked that, is your community behind you? And I said, absolutely. We want to find the best tools. We want to make sure that we're using the best curriculum for our students and that it is long-term, that we're not just piecemealing everything. We want to do the right thing. So I'm excited about that work. Coupled with, I also wanted to share with you, we have joined, as part of my executive coaching efforts, the Learning 2025 AASA. And so our coach, our coach, is Dr. Christy Wilson, who was an AASA president, I think in 2020. She is just a newly retired superintendent out of Mesa. She was there for 13 years. She led a Lighthouse District award. She's nationally recognized, but her expertise is in early literacy. So we had a lot of conversations about that this morning. I'm setting up our problem of practice as a cabinet. She will be visiting our cabinet, but she's also going to be visiting our school, and she has quite a few different districts that she will be nationally connecting us with, especially around early literacy and the work that we are embarking in this state. Other states are further ahead. So I'm looking forward to both of those things. And with that, the only last thing that I want to say is it's so exciting to me that we're talking about teacher development group and math talk, because that has been just the love of my life. And so to hear the elementary principals talking about number sense and math talk, I'm just very, very thrilled, because those things will move the needle. So as we look at scores, Chuck, back to your conversation, there should be no identifier where schools are or what the socioeconomic. And that's how we're going to get there, is these milestones, but setting up the bedrock so that we can just build a really great structure that will outlive all of us, right, for kids. Thanks.
All right. All that we have left is board discussion and comments. So I always look this way first. I'm going to kick it off to you.
All right. Well, I really don't have anything that hasn't been said. But I will just add that I also loved the career and college fair last night. It was outstanding, the best I've seen, and I loved having it joint with both schools at the YMCA on a neutral site. Very impressed with how many participants there were and how many of them were representing careers and trade programs and occupations, and it was just really fun to overhear some of the conversations between students and whoever was representing. I overheard a conversation with a gal from Boeing, and a kid walked up and she just the way she was engaging him, and did you know you could go straight to work for Boeing out of high school without going to college? And the kid didn't know, and I thought, well, isn't that what this is all about? So it was perfect. I loved that I got to see it, and I look forward to just the potential there, because I think everybody saw it, those that organized it. You know, so many people that wanted to come and didn't have enough notice, and as far as vendors or organizations. So the possibilities are just huge, and it was a great start. And that's all.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to discuss other than I'm really looking forward to, I know the elementary principals are, done with their SIP plans, but I'm really interested to hear, maybe, I don't know if there's a way to do like a check-in on the 6-week data. And then I'm kind of looking at you, Chris, because it just got me thinking when you're talking about, with AI and how, if there's, are we able to use a lot of these AI tools to kind of help support them with all of the data analysis and being able to, identify that? Because it seems like the more we can take off the plates, the bean counting, and get them, get this salient information, I think, and being able to see district-wide, I think that can only help. And I think it's kind of perfect storm, because you are such a, a leader in AI and how we can use that, leverage that to advance our understanding of where our holes are. Because, that's it. If we don't know where the gaps are, we can't address them. So anyway, not to put you on the spot, but yeah. And shout out Maintenance and Custodial Week this week to everyone. It's, oh my gosh, right? Like, I can't even keep a house together with 3 people in it. And we have, 17 sites and 9,000 kids and staff. And it's tremendous, the work that goes into keeping the lights on and keeping things look nice and the way they are. And then, of course, Principals Month. So maybe we can shout out to them, at our next meeting. But I think we just saw tonight an example of what an incredible team of professional leaders we have in all of our buildings. So that's it.
I knew the answer to the question. But I guess I always have to bring forward some of the inequities, and some of the inequities that we have on the KP are not intentional, but it's a little further. It's a bridge, it's a peninsula that goes that way. And some of it stems from Pierce County and the inability to make decisions out there. Many years ago, we tried to incorporate so that we could actually control the money that we have out on the KP and put it into roads and making improvements and stuff like that. It's not allowed. And so we're not allowed to have commercial development out on the KP. So it's very limited on what we can do. So I was also part of the Boys and Girls Club many years ago, where Pioneer is at. And I realized quickly that that building and its location even didn't support the KP. And that was part of the reason it was there. So right now, that's why we're seeing a low attendance from the KP to Pioneer. for the magnet school. So I will continue to harp that we need a magnet school on the KP, part of the equity. At some point, we have to do that. We need PACE program out on the KP. You know, we just need to continue to try to drive that bus to get the equal resources. So having said that, there's a scarecrow contest out on the KP. Also, yes. So Key Center has the scarecrows out. You can go through there and vote on them.
When is that?
It's starting now. They're putting them up. I think they have to have them up by like next weekend, which is perfect because that's the farm tour. The farm tour is next weekend out on the KP. You get to see the farms, and on Sunday, I'll bring my big cider press out to Gateway Park, and we'll be making apple cider. So bring your apples. There's a lot of trees out there that are loaded up. Or I take that back. You can't bring your apples. You can bring your apples to my house afterwards. They have to be, yeah. So, yeah, I recognize that there's no intentional reason for us to have the inequities out there. It's not intentional. But when we recognize those low test scores, we also need to see that we need to add some resources to those schools to allow them. I'm done harping. Okay.
I forgot to mention earlier, and I should have at the beginning of the meeting, but David Olson couldn't be here tonight. He's traveling for work, but I know that he's very appreciative of the SIP presentation. It's something that's been a focus of his for many years. So on his behalf, I will say thank you as well. And I'll just keep mine short. It's been really fun to get out to see things that kids are doing. So I think that always reminds us of the work that we do and why it's so important. I did get to go to Breaking Down the Walls today, like Superintendent Barr said. I think it's my 4th one that I've attended, and the morning always starts out kind of slow, and you wonder, are these kids going to come around, or is this going to be the group that really kind of goofs off? But as the day progresses, they become more invested in the process and each other. So it's just great to be able to see kids connect on that level. I've also really enjoyed seeing some of our high school athletes going into the elementary schools in their jerseys, particularly our football players, but going out and they're reading to kids and playing with kids. And I saw a picture of one signing autographs, and I thought, it's such a cool opportunity, but I hope it impresses upon our older students that they do set an example, and our younger students are really watching everything they do. It's an awesome responsibility. So that is all I will say tonight, closing it out of here before 8:30. Our next business meeting will be on Tuesday, October 17th at 6:00 p.m. in this building, and with that, we are adjourned.